West.
Present.
Ms. Sally Ricciardi.
Present.
Mr. Paul Benedict. Present. Ms. Karen Schumann.
Present.
Ms. Sue McIntyre. Sue.
I'm here, present.
Thank you. And Mr. Tom Uhas. Tom,
I don't see him yet.
you may be. Tom? We'll see if Tom comes in.
There he is.
Hello.
Good. All present.
Okay, thank you. Moving on the agenda, Paul had circulated a draft of the November 16th minutes. I would ask if there were no corrections to that for a motion to approve those minutes.
I will make the motion to approve the minutes of November 16th, 2020.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, the motion has been made by Tom Uhas and seconded by Sue McIntyre. Paul, could you poll the numbers, please?
Sir. Ricciardi.
Aye.
Mr. Benedictus, aye. And Ms. McIntyre,
Aye.
Mr. Uhas.
Aye.
All ayes.
Thank you. Moving on, cash flow statement was circulated late this afternoon. I'm sorry for that. I ran into a glitch on comparing one of our commitments to what the actual expenditures were on the repaving project on the south end of town. I got that corrected late, so those were circulated. If there are questions or comments, we can discuss them later. We just basically the tool we use to help us determine what our available questions on it. To the November financial statement, which Karen Heim had circulated. Also covered in the central Dropbox. So are there any questions on the financial statement?
They're all approved, reviewed and approved invoices. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
All the invoices reflected at the bottom of the statement are ones that we had approved at our November meeting. Questions? I'd entertain a motion to approve the financial report for November. Redevelopment.
So moved.
It's been made by Sally Ricciardi. Is there a second to that motion?
This is Sue, I'll second.
Okay. So the motion has been made and seconded to approve the November financial statements. Paul, could you please hold the numbers?
Sir. Mr. West.
Aye.
Ms. Ricciardi.
Aye.
Mr. Benedictus, aye. Ms. McIntyre.
Aye.
Mr. Uhas.
Aye.
All ayes.
Thank you. Next, moving on to the claims. I don't know if you looked at the original claims report, but Karen usually has a summary sheet that is on the top of all of the claims, the details for the claim. It got interfiled and it ended up on page 22 instead of page 1. She has corrected that. I've redeposited the corrected one in the Dropbox. So basically, were there any questions about claims that are on that report? Okay, if there are no about that, then I would ask that there be a motion to approve the claims as presented.
So moved.
Okay. So Sally has moved to approve the claims presented for December. Do I have a second to that motion?
Second, this is Sue, I'll second.
Thank you. The motion has been made and seconded. Paul, could you please? Numbers?
Mr. West,
Aye.
Mr. Chardy,
Aye.
Mr. Benedictus, aye. Ms. McIntyre,
Aye.
Mr. Uhas.
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on the agenda, town manager's report, Jonathan.
On Stellar projects, our State Road 10 sidewalk and West Jefferson streetscape improvements are scheduled to go out to bid mid-January. That's through the dot. And then construction will start on both those in the spring. Lake Max Trails Phase 2 is still going through property acquisition and final design, but is also scheduled to go out to bid next year, mid-July. And we have a proposal from Tree Group for engineering services for Jefferson and Slate Trail, which is the one that was just recently funded through the county stellar application. And that'll be in front of council Tuesday night for their approval, but it's the one that the match will come from Redevelopment Commission. So the sign project at the school, county stellar project, I don't have an update on that. They asked for email address for me so that I can set up a login and user information for the town to be able to put messages on there. Still looking at early next year to get started on installation on those. That's all on the stellar project, unless any of the members have any questions for me.
You said it's the Phase 2 trails. What if we miss one of our trail deadlines within that? What happens to the funding?
I mean, it would be in jeopardy, yeah, if you don't meet a deadline for it.
So we fail because I know it gets dicey as you're figuring this out and getting approvals as you go forward and then you push up against timelines. Because we fund part of that, we support part of that in-kind funding, right?
Right.
From CRC.
Right.
So if you lose the NDOT funding, our funding rolls back into whatever we're on.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the timeline on all these are fine. The one that's in question is actually Lake Max Trails Phase 3,
Okay,
the Culver Academy piece.
and that's further out. We have a little time with that.
Yeah, luckily, they're basically a 4-year process from the time of award until construction. And there's some cushion in most, especially a trail project, there's some cushion built in there. But if it drags on, more than probably 12 months without, it would definitely put the funding in question.
It's too bad because we're like one of NDOT's favorite people. Is that we're one of NDOT's favorite towns
Currently, yes.
because we spend the money on time.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Jonathan on his report on the stellar project and the regional stellar? Okay. Then on your report to defer on the Bose McKinney Evans agreement. Can I talk about residential tip?
Yeah, I just wanted to.
How do you want to-
Oh, yeah, I'll do residential TIF. That's what I have in my sheet next. That idea came up at Cheryl Morphy's presentation. It's a basic requirement that you can't have more than 3% of your single-family housing in your town have been built in the last 3 years. When those specifics first came out, I talked to someone at I think it's DLG guy. It was a program or helping it get rolled out. And the information I was given then was that the new condominiums, Maple Ridge, that those would count for the way they were.
You're cutting in and out, Jonathan. Or at least from my, I don't know if anybody else is having problems, but I am having problems hearing.
A little closer to the mic. See if that helps.
That's good.
Okay.
Better.
Yeah, on residential TIF, the state's narrowed down the definitions, and there's a possibility that we could actually qualify for that. And what that allows you to do is form a new TIF zone that you could actually collect new property taxes from that aren't for commercial buildings. So single family homes that go up in a residential TIF area, your redevelopment commission could collect those funds and basically, use them for the infrastructure that it would take to facilitate that development. So you could bond out and borrow those funds and pay them back through the property taxes, whether it's for a new street, new water, new sewer, et cetera. So I just started collecting data on it, and we'll follow up in the future on whether or not it's going to work for us. The last thing I'm waiting for is the list of all our building permits from the last 3 years from the planning department. And I'm headed there tomorrow on some other stuff and hoping to get that back tomorrow. And then there's a worksheet that DLGF provides that you can put in your information and kind of do a self-assessment and then follow up with them as to whether or not we qualify. So that's all, just for your information at this point. On the economic, sorry.
Any questions for Jonathan on the residential TIF? I mean, it's a new subject. Or questions that you'd like him to look into?
If you can get the numbers to work, because I mean, we've moved this town tear downs and putting houses back up, bigger houses in place of one. So that's not really, I don't know if that's considered new. It's not adding to the housing stock.
Yeah, so if it's a tear down and you reconstruct it on the same, on the same parcel, they would consider that a new single family home if it happened in town.
Oh, interesting.
So those would count against us, but the ones that I thought would throw us out were the Maple Ridge ones, but the definitions they have now, I think those would be exempt, and that I think we will get under the threshold and probably qualify.
And so you're talking about Sand Hill, the Maple Ridge, or no, the Maple Ridge next.
Maple Ridge, Sand Hill won't count because
Right.
they're
rentals,
apartments
yeah.
or they're townhomes, yeah. So none of those will count against us.
That's a commercial venture. So. And the one concern that, and Jonathan and I had some discussion about this on the residential TIF. I mean, theoretically, it sounds like it could be very helpful for us in pulling new families into town with affordable housing that they could own. The potential problem is how do we still abide by the Fair Housing Act and not be restrictive on who can buy this housing? So if there's a development that went up the south end of town and Redevelopment Commission did a bond to pay for some of the infrastructure development, the water, sewer, streets, curbs, things like that. And the developer then agreed that he or she would develop housing within a certain price range that would be considered affordable. How do we control who can buy those homes to meet our objective of getting new families living in town full time, as opposed to new housing stock for academy families? So it's a fair housing issue. But anyway, I think it's an interesting one to consider to look into. Any other questions for Jonathan on the residential TIF? Okay, go ahead, Jonathan.
On the economic development workshop, the council had to reschedule our final session with Cheryl just due to some other things coming up in front of town council. And so now we have her scheduled for our first meeting in January. And so she'll also provide a proposal then to council to follow up to continue her services into the next year and work on a series of economic development items for the town, building off those recommendations that she came up with at the final group session. So we'll have that to share in January. That's my only update on that one. And then I think I have small business pitch night. So Jenny Monroe, and it looks like, yeah, Matt Keaty's on the call tonight. We had kind of discussed over email, and I think a few other members of Develop Culver, the idea of doing the small business pitch night. And it's kind of like a grant program The difference would be that we're basically looking for businesses or nonprofits paired up with a business to pitch us ideas for combined town and redevelopment commission investments that would help facilitate outdoor meetings and safe gatherings, this winter during COVID. So Matt had been on a presentation, I believe through Main Street or Visitor Center, I'm not sure which, but he shared with us a few different ideas. So kind of going off his list and a few other things, it could be anything like the plastic igloos for dining outdoors, space heaters, seasonal lighting, temporary art installations, seasonal decorations, outdoor furniture, things to help set up an outdoor market, tents, etc. Anything that would help people conduct business, serve food, give people an excuse to come out safely during these next few months. It could be pretty tough for a lot of people. So the basic idea that I came up with and talking with Matt and Jenny was, that if we did a pitch night, it's something we talked about before in different scenarios. In early January, allow businesses to come. There'd be a one-page application, 1 or 2 pages, and allow them to give a short presentation, a budget, an overview of what they'd like to see. And then if council and redevelopment each put in a small pool of funds, that committee, based with members from redevelopment, from council, and maybe a few other folks, Main Street, and maybe our school corporation, if we could figure all that out. There'd be a group that then would review, make a selection, and then if it's, if we do end up finding a project through this that would make sense for redevelopment commission funding, it would be purchased and turned over to the town for ownership. So it'd have to be something that you could use kind of on a sidewalk, on a public street, in a park, something that would be available to the public, not just in a private building or something like that. And it'd be a preference towards things that we could get out early, that things that easy to implement, don't require a lot of staff, that could be done in February and March. I think that's the overview, I guess. And if you all are interested, my thought was to do 5,000 here, and I'd ask council for the same thing at their next meeting. It'd give us a budget of 10,000 to work with, and not that we would spend that all, but that would give us some options. Again, the review committee would have to kind of balance, is this something the redevelopment commission could fund, or is this something the council could fund, or both? So with that being said, I also included in my report just kind of a draft of some rules and what the application might look like, what the voting panel would be made up of, all those kind of things. So at this point, if you have any questions.
Questions in the room for Paul?
Mine's always Paul. Because I always have questions. Yeah.
Good place to start.
I think it's a good idea. We got a really tough year. Our businesses have a really tough next couple of months in front of them. I think in general that if this is a partnership with town council, then it's whatever gets spent equally between the two organizations. I think if you have a board that broad that's going to review this, that we make sure that whoever's on it, if somebody's from town council, they're not on any of the other organizations. So that allows other people to be in there. So if you're a chamber member and town council member, you should, you go on as one, but they don't have somebody, you don't have more than, from the outside looking in, more than one entity has more than one seat. I think it'd be nice to ask the chamber, develop Culver or Kiwanis, if they want to donate anything else as part of this. They may have some funds or something that they want to donate in, they may, just to make the pot any bigger. They don't have to. And you figure, as you said, if you go with a certain amount of money between us and the town council, that'll probably be enough, because it's a tough thing to get done in a short period of time. But if I've noticed anything in the last couple of months, organizations and people have been more than generous. And it's a good opportunity to ask them to participate. Those are my questions, my observations.
Sally?
It sounds like it would be a good idea to me as well. And I think splitting the fees between the two, or costs between the two, is fine. Your idea of asking, you know, other entities want to kick in to help fund it is fine. And if they can't, then that's fine as well. Considering the impact that the economy's having right now. I guess that's it.
Okay, online questions, Karen, anything?
Nope, I think it's a great idea to get the input.
Okay. Sue? Sue, do you have any questions?
Sorry, I was muted. I think it's a good idea. I like the idea and, you know, would support funding it.
Okay, good. Tom?
No, I don't really have any input at this point.
I guess my one question, and we discussed it a little bit, Jonathan, is would like to see it involve more than just a capital purchase. So if it could be a process, it could be an event. I mean, whatever the creativity is, if somebody comes up with an idea, that it would just not confine it to, you know, to buying a piece of equipment and donating it or something like that. But just to expand the scope of what it could be. So, and I think it's a good idea, and I think it, support funding it from both the town council and CRC makes sense.
Just to build on what Rich is saying, sometimes renting something is cheaper than buying it and maintaining it. So if you rent something for an event versus the town now has to store it and keep it, and all of a sudden you have.
Lease would definitely be an option if it met all the criteria.
And I'm sure the group that you put together that would review this, you talk that through with them.
Yeah.
So they have a rubric to use when they sit down and go, what's best for the town, near and long term. Okay.
If there's support for it, I guess my request tonight would be that you approve up to $5,000 for the project. And also, if you're comfortable, it'd be great if you would appoint a member willing to serve and hopefully join us. I think I set a potential meeting date of January 19th. If that ends up working, that was.
Two things, we can't appoint somebody because we're all going to be, we don't know who's going to be here next year. So.
I will be.
That's true.
Not that I can vote, but yeah.
And does the town council supporting of putting in $5,000 themselves at this point?
I have, like I said, I'll be on their agenda for tomorrow night.
So we would do a match up to.
So
Yeah.
contingent
Okay.
upon
Yeah.
the town
Okay.
council approving it, then, and so is that your motion, Paul?
No, it was a clarification. When you're ready for the motion, we can do that. Okay.
We can hold off on the appointment, I guess, until
Yeah.
the first of the year.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Figure it out.
Yeah.
So, so I think if there are no more questions,
I'll make a motion. PRC support the grant idea night funding as proposed, and that we our funds match town council's funding not to exceed $5,000.
motion on the table, is there a second to that?
This is Sue, I second.
Okay, so we have a motion that's made by Paul, seconded by Sue. Paul, could you poll the members, please?
Certainly. Mr. West,
Aye.
Ms. Ricciardi,
Aye.
Mr. De Benedictis, aye. Ms. McIntyre,
Aye.
Mr. Uhas.
Aye.
Motion is passed.
Okay, good, thank you.
That was it for me, I think. So, thank you.
Good. We, under old business, we covered the economic development workshop. Branding campaign, we've asked Matt, representing the visitor center, to put together a report or presentation. He had requested that we defer that to January, both giving him more time to learn his new job and then also to present to whoever the new membership is for the redevelopment commission. Seemed to make sense. So I think that.
And my point of bringing it up and putting it on here, Rich, is overall, I think it's good that I feel like the branding right now has been no formal intent guidance or really oversight. We haven't, and we've given it and kind of a general feel for what comes back. But as we've done contracts with other entities, we should probably do something as it relates to this. And if this is right, because I know I've heard the phrase, overall, this is good for Culver, and it may be, but I think that whatever the new town, the CRC group looks like next year, it's good timing for Matt to come in and talk to them about it, and they can understand and lay out what kind of branding they're looking for. I mean, this goes hand in hand with what's going on with economic development, and that we're trying to do with Cheryl Morphew as well. So I just wanted to put that out there, and I'll put that in the notes, in the minutes, so whoever gets those next month, they'll have a sense of that.
Okay, good, thank you. Moving on, new business, facade grants. Tom, anything new in that area?
I have nothing new to report.
Okay, thank you. Jonathan, you didn't have anything? Okay, good, thank you. MCEDC quarterly report, we deferred it at the last meeting because Jerry Chavez is leaving the organization. Their new director is not coming on board till the 7th, I think, of January. I talked to their office about it. And I think at that point, that we would have it on our agenda for January. We'd like the new director to appear, report on the progress on the current contract, and we're prepared, and we could have a discussion with him beforehand about a proposal for 2021, but to the new members of the commission, or whoever the members of the commission are in January. So,
When did you understand about that?
last week.
There have been some
Probably-
changes. Yeah,
Oh, what, really?
yeah.
She gave me the guy's name and everything.
Okay, yeah, that's when you said he, that's what
Yeah.
caught my attention. So the person who had accepted it and the notice went out, press release and everything, it sounds like
He got an
Company
offer, he got a counter offered by his current
Yeah.
employer, and he's not coming.
but I think they had another person that they
Yeah.
liked during the application process, and it sounds like they will still have someone probably around that same time frame.
Okay, well, I'll stay in touch with her, and then if they have somebody on board by that time, and we'll at least ask them to come and introduce themselves. Their ability to report would be based upon when they start, I guess.
Yeah.
We could ask Greg, but I don't think that would be very productive.
I think we should wait until there's a director there.
So, okay, anything else on that? Any questions, suggestions? Karen, you're up. Culver Community School Corporation, capital building project.
So I think most of you probably seen the slides that Richard shared, and just so there's an understanding, typically there's about 15% of revenue gained from TIFs that should go to school corporations. So with that thought, and with our upcoming capital projects and ideas that we have as a corporation, I wanted the input of CRC, and potentially we take this further into a community survey. So this might be where Jonathan, you or visitor centers help me engage in this kind of conversation. So one thing would be like some short-term projects that I think would help the community. Some things would be like lighting at the new park for the soccer, or lighting at our softball field or baseball fields. That way there could be some more night games, have more tournaments because you have lighting at those facilities, which would also help the town by bringing, guest teams and people into town. Another potential would be putting a well at the park, the new park. And that well would help fund the water that is being used in the current facility, but also it could add, if we ever wanted to do the splash pad, and that would be like a no cost type splash pad because it would come from a well. If we wanted to put a dog park in that area, you could have a watering system out there for dogs too. So that's another potential. That's not something that necessarily we could put the well there, but I see it more as a community benefit than necessarily our benefit. But also with that well, if we actually start using those soccer fields, we're probably going to need to put some type of sprinkler system on those soccer fields. If they get used daily too much, too often, the grass can't sustain, so you have to make sure you're watering it well. So that would be the reason for the well at the park area. Some things curriculum-wise, computer science has to be offered K through 12 starting next school year, and we already are currently doing that kind of practice, but my question would be, is there something that, as we are now a digitally designated town, that we should definitely focus on with our computer science so that it brings union to that it brings acknowledgement to our town? And so that's just a fresh idea off the idea of computer science and where should that go on our curriculum basis that would also help the town. Another potential program would be an entrepreneurial program. Danielle Maverick and I have kind of talked about this before, where businesses in town would use our students as interns, or we create a entrepreneurial hub in our school where if there is a new business who wants to get started, they would come and pilot what type of workforce they need within our school and train people within our school. And then those kids then would go out and become potential employees of those companies. Some schools that currently do that, for example, IBM has a whole school in downtown Chicago. And they fund the neighborhood school, and all those kids are anticipated to work for IBM in the future. So that both helps their computer science and helps their workforce. And then they also have an entrepreneurial hub where they can design apps, programming, digital media for local businesses, all within this IBM school. Now, it doesn't say that they're necessarily going to go to IBM because they still have a standard curriculum that they follow, but there is that little hub in the school. So with that kind of thought is, you know, we want to attract knowledge-based families, you know, people that can work from home or to move to Culver. We need to offer those family things for their children within our school corporation that drives them to come here too. So that's where my thought of, you know, visitor center, realtors in town, and all of CRC to come up with ideas of what is our niche here at Culver that's going to attract new families to move here. So as we look down our capital projects and look at the conjunction with CRC and that 15%, what can we do that's a united front to attract families as a year-round residents? Some other ideas besides those ones would be, there's the potential where we could do a no tax increase lease to capture a substantial amount of money to build a field house. Potentially within that field house, there could be a fine arts section to it, could have an extra gym to it, could have a hockey rink in it. The sustainability of sometimes a hockey rink is quite costly, so that would require some extra input maybe from CRC that they would help fund the upkeep or whatever of this hockey rink, if that was really what would draw families to the Culver town. Some other ideas, you know, we have started a fishing club that we become a fishing sport town that would attract. I don't know how much that would attract families either, but I'm asking for ideas, I guess, along this path of let's put our money to use in a good way, in a united way that adds programs that help people choose Culver because of what our school corporation offers. And sometimes it's better to be a niche driven than to try to do everything to attract people. So I guess from each one of you, I would ask for you to, when you're talking to people in town, when you're meeting new people that come into your stores or your shops or whatever, or even local people, what is it that would attract families to move to Culver?
Questions for Karen, comments? Starting to move at this time with Sally.
I don't have any questions, I guess, other than, trying to find that niche and find the people that are wanting to move to Culver, is going to be a interesting endeavor, but a necessary one.
I have a question and a comment. A lot of what you're talking about is really ties into the place. Have you taken this idea to the town council yet?
No, because the reason it's at this level is because of the funding that is there with CRC, and that we will start creating our capital project plan, and to know that if we did this major expense in 2 to 3 years, is that support to help, if, for example, let's say the hockey rink, I could also see that being used by town. It could be a place where families could go. It would not just be school related.
Sure.
We could have, same thing with the park and the dog park, or same thing with any of these things. But it would require a commitment from CRC to not so much make it happen, but to sustain the ability of it to happen.
Yeah, so, and I'm taking it back, just as we support trails and we support other things in this quality of place, those were designed in part of the town's and the town council's view and vision of Culver. So I encourage you to take this to the town council too, because parts of this may fall into what we do. Clearly the workforce side, and that's one of the big issues, whether it's around computers and affordable housing that attracts relevant people and families here. But I'd encourage you to take it to town council, also get with Cheryl Morphew, if she's who we're going to use in the next series of things, because she's been involved in this in other towns. Other towns have faced this. My only thought is a nightmare scenario is we build something and we have to maintain it, and the situation changes and we're maintaining something that we didn't want to, and that again is driven by what the town wants to be, and then we support that. I think it's a great idea that you hired a marketer, right? It's on your team.
Yep.
That you maybe provide in the near future to the town council and to CRC for information services what your marketing plan is, because that may help us with some ideas.
Okay. Yeah.
Just my thoughts.
Okay, Tom, anything?
I really don't. I mean, we're back to the time, the $64,000 question in Culver is the niche in Culver. How do we encourage families to come and stay to Culver? I think it would be very interesting to have input, and I know it doesn't seem that really any of the realtors in town are involved with anything. Who's coming to town? Who's buying houses? I mean, I think I know who's buying houses, and unfortunately, it doesn't seem like it's families with children. And can we bend that curve by having these other options or other things available in the school corporation? Or are we going to have a lighted baseball field and beautiful soccer fields and we still don't have any people coming except old people walking around it? So I don't know. I mean, it's the time honored that is the Culver question, and it's been that way as long as I've been here. So, that'd be my thing. I have said for years is that we have to follow the way the winds are blowing us and which way the market is telling us to go. And I just think if you look at the demographics of what's going on, it's not young people with kids. And it's going to be very interesting to see how our apartments that are going to be online soon with paddocks, because those are the income based, and hopefully those are people that are younger starting out and have some kids, if that's really going to help the school corporation. If we end up just getting, single family people, or just a single person or two coworkers, or an older group that's there, that's not going to meet the mission either. And I think that's the best hope that we've got, is the income-based housing. That's going to be what happens in the next couple of years over there. I think is going to be very telling as to, what else can we possibly do? So I hate to ramble on there, but anyway, those are just kind of my thoughts. I hate to, the old build it and they will come. We already have 2 hockey rinks in Culver. Do we need a third one? Isn't there a way that maybe something could be worked out? I don't know. I just think that that's a little over the top at this point in time.
Okay, Sue?
You're muted, Sue. We can't.
Okay. I was going to use that same term. I don't want to get into a scenario if we build it, they will come, or make that assumption. I think that we have to, and asking people is, you get some opinions, but doesn't mean that it would really be sustainable. So you really, I think, have to do your homework, and unfortunately, probably hire consultants to tell you what the potential is of, people coming into another hockey arena, or to a, the swimming pool, if that was something on the list, or, so I'm with Tom in the perspective of, I guess we'll see how the housing goes that we've already paid for, to see what we get out of it, if that's going to make a difference. I'm of course, in my scenario, I'm of the opinion that we should put money into retirement communities, retirement housing. And that to me is, between people coming to the lake and people retiring here, seems to be the demographic we're attracting, whether we like it or not. I know that's not popular, but that's my opinion.
I'll second that motion.
Anyway, that's all I have to say.
All right. My personal thought, I think if we came up with a great idea, and we had something to back it up, I think the hockey rink is a bit of, but I think it's trying to think outside the box. If we could become a hockey center, it's a very popular sport among school-aged kids. So I guess I would just encourage us, to continue to have the discussion. I think have it as part of our economic development workshops too. I think the preparing a workforce that meets the needs of current and or prospective employers, I think is an important thing. The IBM school, I think, is an interesting concept. And now that's something, again, with the ideas together. I guess I'm just like Tom, I'm rambling on because I'm another old man in town here. So,
Speak for yourself, Rich.
Hey, Karen, I have a question for you.
Uh-huh.
When you throw out the number 15%, 15% of what? Is it of AV or of the total budget that you're talking about?
Of the collected revenue.
Where did you get that number?
It's the code or legislation of TIFs. It'd be about 75,000-ish.
it was in the slides that I sent out on the elected officials webinar for TIF. I think it was on, I want to say, it was like 18, 17, or somewhere in that series. It talked about up to 15% of TIF dollars being spent for educational programs and capital.
Thank you.
That was just kind of a recommendation concept.
It wasn't mandated.
Yeah.
It doesn't say you've got to spend.
The reason why I ask, I've been familiar with Redevelopment Association of Indiana, our last meeting. They mentioned some possible legislative changes coming up next year. And one of them was about having like year 10 new TIF districts as they're formed, that a percentage of the AV would pass through on to the school corporation. So I just wanted to, this is a totally separate thing.
This is not new legislation. This isn't sunsetting TIF districts earlier or sharing excess revenue in that way.
Gotcha.
Thank you. It's funding programs and capital projects. And one, I think it's pretty clear cut from the lawsuit a few years ago. If we built a hockey rink, we could not pay to operate it. The TIF dollars could not be used for continuing operation of it. So this might be something to do a variation of what Jonathan was talking about with an idea night. Maybe have a competition, or we've had a couple of consultants do sort of gap analysis for it, but I don't think this, I don't think we've come up with any magical ideas yet. So.
But there's not money that is itemized to go back to the school, right?
No.
No.
Okay.
No.
It's just a suggestion. I mean, at this point, we're just at the visionary point. Nothing solid. Just, I would want to do something with intentionality, but not to the point where I'm shooting myself in the foot and lose my position because I build the wrong thing, and that whole "they build it and they will come." I don't like to operate under that mentality either. But I do think there needs to be the current clientele that is not in the town of Culver. The 3 other townships that we do have in our school corporation make up about 75% of our free and reduced population. So, those kids do participate in activities, but that's not the population to draw to Culver. There has to be a different population to draw to Culver. So I guess that's just where I'm at of how do we market our schools? Because there are families who, they choose their destination based on what the school has to offer for them. But in us creating things at the school, like right now we're putting the fencing up. Some of that is aesthetics. People would drive by and they see something that looks nice. That's more appealing to them than if something looks like it hasn't been kept up over time. So we're trying to do all these things that make the school corporation attractive to people as they would be driving through here. And if their kids were to be moving back here, they think it's at least externally something on the nice, and then that opens them up and comes into the school. So that's just where I'm at. We have debt that is coming off that we can do some tax neutral investments into something bigger. And that's where I wanted the ideas from or input from. And I think you're right, Tom, about we just need to get with the realtors and see what would draw people here. And again, maybe it is retirement. Maybe it. The other factor in that is, as a school corporation or as a town or a township, you have to be affiliated with a school corporation. So if we don't continue to grow and the state does change ideas on size of schools, that would cause Culver to be part of Argus or part of Plymouth or school corporation, which then your tax base would go up $1.50 or more than what it currently is. But
I don't think any of us want to see it go there, so.
Yeah.
Looking for the creative thinking.
no, we could be a nice little niche nest egg of both retirement and something else. But what that something else is, I need assistance on figuring that out, I guess. And I can hire a consultant too, at least then that way I have somebody else to blame than myself. But
Okay, thank you, Karen. Anything else on this? Next item on the agenda, our next regularly scheduled meeting is January 18th, which is the federal holiday. It's a state holiday. Technically, the town offices are closed. Every year when we do this, then Jonathan and Karen end up coming in and working on that holiday, and I'm sure they don't recover that. So just forward looking, are we open to rescheduling that meeting to another date in January? Sure. What are thoughts on that? I mean, you want to stay with the Monday, we can do the Monday before, the Monday after.
What else scheduled on the Monday before? Second Monday plan.
It's the 12th. I won't be here for that.
The 11th?
I'm sorry. Yep. Good. The 11th.
You won't be here.
I will be actually. That works for me.
Okay, so if we're going to stick with the Monday, the 11th, or 2 weeks after that, the 25th.
Either day works for me.
Feedback from online members.
I'm okay. I'm not going anywhere,
Okay.
so I'll do whatever.
Well, and I don't, yeah. Sue?
Yeah, I'll be gone the first 2 weeks in January.
Okay. Karen?
the 11th or the 25th work for me.
Okay. Sally?
I believe they work for me as well.
And they're fine with me, so,
Rich, when is the town council meeting in January?
the first one is the 12th, I believe.
So I would suggest that we not have the 11th because they're not going to vote on board members until the 12th.
Good point.
Correct. So the town council meetings are the 12th and 26th. So the 25th then, is everybody fine with the 25th?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're moving the scheduled CRC meeting on January 18th to the 25th of January, 5 p.m. We're meeting remotely, we're offering that option. Okay. Any members of the public online who have questions or input? You can raise your hand or unmute yourself. Is there anybody out there?
Since it came up earlier, I see Kevin Berger's on. Kevin, do you have any update on the paddocks, how rental's gone?
Yeah.
county.
I know, I saw the students over there.
We've got 6 currently rented with 2 more supposed to be rented by the end of the month. So we'll have a total of 8 going into 2021.
Are those all in the first building, Kevin, or some of those townhomes, do you know?
It's a mix between the apartment building and the townhome. We've got 2 of them with C of Os right now. And some people are wanting the garden units and some are wanting townhomes.
Thanks.
Good.
Yep.
And then-
Kevin, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So the building that the garages face Jefferson, that's the townhomes?
Those are the ones that are currently open.
Okay, and then you do have other applications or people waiting for one of the larger buildings, the apartment building itself?
There are several units filled in the first apartment building.
And the people are in, those have gotten an occupancy permit already?
One of the apartment buildings has an occupancy permit. The one at the northwest corner, and then the building, which is 505 on the south side of Cavalier Drive, has a C of O. So those 2 buildings are available. So that's 16 units currently available.
Okay, and do you have people in the apartment too? It looked like there was somebody in the townhome one the other night.
Yes, there are people in the apartments. I think there's at least 2 of the apartment buildings leased right now. Excuse me, 2 of the apartment units leased right now.
And do you, or can you, maybe you can't reveal that information. I don't know how that all works, but will you be able to keep us abreast of the demographic of who's moving in there?
I can give you information as long as I don't do anything with names and stuff. So I think I can do demographic stuff. I've asked Bradley, he's doing the management, to track some of that for me. I don't think they've got very much on it yet. I do know, because I've asked the question, and there's been quite a few that have been just relocating in town right now. But I think at least a couple of them are new residents, not from Culver.
No,
Okay.
I'm really looking for kids is what I'm looking for.
Yeah, it would be helpful to know what kind, if we got the young families with kids that we're trying to attract.
And that's what we're marketing to, but that's not who's available to move real easy right now. So I expect that to happen further down the line. As we've discussed, they're all 2 and 3 bedroom units with the goal of having families in them. But there's fair housing rules where I can't necessarily turn other people down too. So, and we got a bunch of open, so they'll be more available as it comes on.
I know Matt at the Visitor Center is working with you on the welcome wagon baskets, and I think you have those currently. We may be able to capture some contact information with people that way.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else? Any other public input? I don't see anything surfacing. So member input, we'll start online. Karen, anything?
Nope, thank you.
Sue?
I'm good.
Tom?
I'm good. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas.
Same
Tom,
to you.
Merry Christmas. Sally?
I have nothing.
Okay. Paul?
I want to thank Kevin Berger. Kevin was kind enough to give myself and Lee, my wife, a tour of the new buildings. And I know you're targeting certain demographic requirements and everything, or income requirements. Thought you did a great job with that. And walking through the fact that you can get townhomes with garages is very impressive. And Kevin, I know you'd mentioned, I think your first phase, you've got 16 or more of the 24 units already occupied. I think next year, I hope CRC were able to sit down and go over with you kind of what you can share about who's moving in, because that can help shape some of the things that maybe we can do to support that. And I thought your comments about targeting the peripheral counties to pull people in, because that's primarily where ACPI pulls their workforce from, is a great idea, and it deserves further merit, and it may support, and Karen, you may find that you want to put your marketing person that way toward that as well, to look at solving a couple problems for us. But again, I want to thank you, Kevin, because that was, and I encourage anyone, if not that they use a tour guide, but you should take a look at it to understand what he's built there. And he's got a requirement and there's a price point he has to hit. But quite frankly, what you shared about your backers was just, that's all I've got to say.
Okay, thank you, Paul. I do not have anything. So we will entertain a motion to adjourn. Sally has moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
Sally has moved to adjourn. Sue seconded. All, Paul, I guess you want to take the roll.
Certainly. Mr. West,
Aye.
Ms. Ricciardi,
Aye.
Mr. Benedictus, aye. Karen, you always get the vote on this. Ms. Schuman,
Aye.
Ms. McIntyre,
Aye.
Mr. Uhas.
Aye.
Thank you all very much. Have a good holiday. Remember the deadline, I think, if you're interested in reapplying, is the 7th, I believe.
Due back in on the 8th, isn't it? So,
For some reason, I thought it was the 6th, but
okay. Sooner's better than later.
yes.
So, thank you all. Have a good holiday.
You too.
Bye.
Aye.